So anyway, I guess this video is brought to everybody by the fine manufacturers of Yingling Lager.
Cheers.
It was a good reason to cheers. I mean, you smashed your 7th deer this evening.
Yeah.
We just got done butchering.
Yep.
Boy, a little bit of shenanigans here this evening.
Yeah, we got out. Well, you didn't get out. You were working. I got out. All the late season stuff we talked about last time all played a role. And this deer was particularly cool for me because I think I called you. When did I call you? On Tuesday or Wednesday?
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I just figured out why these deer are where they are. And it sounds so silly. Like they're following their noses. They're going into the wind every time they move. So they're basically sitting in some bedding areas, and they can come out northeast, south or west. And I was trying to pinpoint why they're coming out in each direction. And then today it was just, I told you, I was like, south wind, I'm going in there. I know they're going to come out this way. And that's what happened. Just, it was perfect. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, they're super high pressured. So I think in this particular area that we're hunting, in a lot of these spots, we know where they're bedded because the bedding it's just where it is. And then when they get up to move, they move directly into that wind. Whatever direction that wind's moving, they move directly into that wind because there's so much pressure on them. They don't move at a diagonal crosswind, and we saw that all season. I mean, any of the big bucks that we got video of at 115 yards when we moved in under heavy wind, they always got up, and we would set up downwind of them, and they would move right into the wind away from us every single time. And I don't think it was an issue of us, letting them know they're there, because there's no reason why a 140-inch deer would stand in a field 115 yards away for 45 minutes feeding if it knew we were there. So I'm truly convinced that there's so much pressure on some of these deer that we're hunting that that's exactly what they do 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Unless there's some other outside factor that influences that, but everything else aside, I think that's just what they're doing.
Well, and I mean, to put it in perspective for everybody, when we talk pressure, I mean, we're talking these deer see at least in a small 300-yard stretch of woods, they're seeing at least 1 to 2 hunters a day. And it's every single day since the late season's opened up for us. We know for a fact, we just learned this, some of the does in there are 5+ years old. They're mature does, and those are only the ones that have been tagged that we can identify. We know for a fact.
Well, we might as well break it down. I mean, a lot of the hunting that we're doing now is on a military reserve.
Yep.
There's some tiny woodlots inside of the cantonment area, and then there's some bigger places that we hunt too. But there's data. You have to go into a website and sign in. So looking at the data over a period of 3 or 4 hunting seasons, you get the idea of just how many people are hunting specific areas and how much pressure they're getting. And there are guys signed into these areas relentlessly. Some of them have max capacity, and a lot of them are at full capacity for 75 or 80% of the season. And then when the rut happens, there's people are kind of going everywhere. But for the most part, the hunters, man, they get on deer in certain spots, and they just hunt it and hunt it and hunt it. And even now, late season, with the training that goes on in this military installation, there are days where there's not a lot of open areas to hunt, and that the pressure doubles on days like that. And today was one of those days. Just hard to get on deer that are going to move before it gets dark, and it's hard to get on them where they haven't already been bumped that day or pushed. And all that stuff influences what they do. There's construction going on in a lot of these places. There's heavy troop movements. There's just a litany of outside factors that we have to consider. And when you put it all together, and you see deer within range 85 or 95% of the time that you're out there hunting, it's a different feeling that you get. It's almost like, man, how do you not shoot them? Mm-hmm. But as I say that, there's a whole lot of guys that they hunt it, they still struggle with it, and they get as frustrated could be trying to deal with all that stuff. And we just have to overcome that, and that's what we do. And I think that's why we're successful. I don't get mad when somebody comes bouncing in. I mean, it's just whatever.
It is what it is. I mean, sometimes it can work out to your advantage.
Certainly.
If they come busting into the other side of one of these woodlots and they start pushing deer through them, we're talking a small funnel. You're talking 75 yards is pretty much how wide these are, and then maybe 300 to 400 yards long. So, yeah, I mean, it can work out in your advantage. A lot of times it doesn't. I think what I see more often is just somebody coming in upwind, not paying attention. And today I had to sit upwind, but I was so careful about how I did it. I even texted you at one point, and I was like, dude, they know I'm here. They spent 10 to 15 minutes just looking for me. The good side, or the good part of hunting these areas, is that there's a lot of people moving around. So just because they wind a person doesn't mean it's anything necessarily out of the ordinary. But
yeah, they're going to run into people every day.
They spent 10 to 15 minutes just sitting there, like, looking around, like, I know something's there.
Yep.
But without further ado, right, let's jump right into the podcast here.
Episode 2.
Episode 2. We're going to debunk some common misconceptions in the hunting community. The first one, and we'll just start off with the scent control. And this is I can tie this into tonight so well, just because you and I practice scent control 100%.
I used to a lot more. This year, I kind of, I strayed away from it a lot. I mean, I still try to keep my clothes clean. I try to wash them in scent-free stuff, and I'll put them in a box in a vehicle and stuff. Try to only get dressed in the field. But I used to be so worried about, not wearing the same pair of boots to a parking lot or to get gas or something like that. But this year, I didn't pay nearly as much attention to the scent control, and I don't think it hurt me. But there's reasons for that. There's a lot of good reasons for that, and I think we've really dialed in on how we're hunting them, what our entry and exits are, and how to keep our wind off the deer, at least until they get into range. And that's the other challenge. I mean, even when they're getting in close, if you've got 7 or 8 deer coming in, eventually one is going to get in your wind cone or get downwind of you, and you've got to take your shots, and you've got to be efficient with it. You can't wait around, and then you've got to watch the deer and kind of figure out what they're doing and how many eyes are looking, and move accordingly, and really try to be stealthy. Again, height helps us there too.
Yep.
A lot of other factors help us.
Yeah.
Saddle hunting helps 100%. Get behind a tree. Don't let them spook.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, do you want to walk through your scent control regime?
I mean, so it's we keep stuff in airtight bins. So we start off with washing it. I normally wash it with the dead downwind or whatever the product is.
Yep.
So I start with that, and then air dry it outside, and then it goes right into the bin. And then you and I both have ozone generators that we use on our clothing as well. And I don't even know why I do it at this point, because every time I do, like, I get busted all the time on wind. Like, it doesn't seem to help. The one thing I will say is I do occasionally get away with, like, I'm very particular about my boots, right? I try and keep them only outside, like, try and keep them somewhere, like, I'm not getting human scent on them. I'll run them in the bin with the ozone generator. And I will have deer cross over my scent trail coming in, or where I came in from, and not notice. But at the same time, some of these bucks, man, they've picked me off too, even on the scent trail. And I just, when you get into the amount of scent receptors, right? So you talk about like cadaver dogs or whatever the police are using. They have, I believe it's about 5 million scent receptors in their nose, meaning they can, in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, they can pick up a drop of blood. Deer have, I believe it's 10 to 12 million scent receptors. So you have an animal that's smarter than, that has better, I don't even know how to describe it, better scent.
Has a better ability to pick scent up.
Yeah, better ability to pick scent up than police dogs. Like, and they can find bodies under concrete. Like, you don't have a chance if you don't play the wind. You don't stand a chance.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those products out there, the sprays, again, I used to use them. I don't believe in the hype like I used to. I don't think that spending the extra money on that stuff is really for me. I mean, if you like it and you do it, hey, look, that's you. Some people believe wholeheartedly that stuff works, but for me, I think my number one scent control issue is, I'll drive down the road before I go to a spot, and I'm putting my wind checker out the window and coming to a complete stop, checking the wind, and I'm like, man, if I'm going up on this hillside, there's just no way tonight with the deer bedded where they're at, I'm going to be able to have a successful hunt. So I pick a different location. I've always got alternate locations that I can hunt. And that's the great part about playing the wind. You just got to move around, and it forces you to actually move around. It forces you to be more mobile.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, especially for bucks, you're going to have a better chance shooting a buck on a first or second sit than you will 5 or 6 sits in, because they're going to know. Like if you sit in a tree till dark and the deer doesn't come in because whatever, the temperature was too high or the deer just wasn't moving until after dark, when he comes through there later on after you left, he knows you were there. There's no doubt about it. And you'll see him act certain ways on trail cameras. The day after you hang a trail camera, you'll get a buck on a trail cam, and he'll be looking kind of antsy because he knows something's wrong, and he looks right at the trail camera. You get 2-3 nice pictures, and then boom, you don't see that deer for 2 or 3 weeks, and that's because he knew you were there. And there's no other way for me to really explain scent control. I go through my regime. I do use the ozone because I think if I'm out for a morning hunt and I'm going to go in for the evening hunt and I don't have a chance to get back, or I'm not using fresh clothes, I'll throw them in the ozone generator. I do have the Bowhunter Extreme scent log suit, which I love that stuff. You guys see me wear that all the time in all the videos I've posted. I think there's a little bit to say about carbon clothing. Does it collect all the human scent? No, because I know what rubber boots smell like on the inside. They don't necessarily smell like human scent, but they smell like rubber boots. There's nothing you can do you're not covering that up. You're certainly not, you're not keeping that scent trapped in a scent lock suit. I don't believe that for a moment. I know, there's some other guys out there that are, they're world renowned for their hunting, and they'll say, oh, I just use scent lock and I don't use anything else and I don't worry about the wind. I don't think that's a true statement, but that's for a different conversation when we go after some guys and really kind of dive into what they say and what we think and everything like that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I do like the ozone generator though, because I think it allows me to hunt. Like, if I can smell me in the clothing, like that kind of just bothers me. I don't know why. Like that kind of bothers me. So it does like eliminate the human scent on your clothing. But you're out there breathing. Like the deer have to be able to smell your breath when you're just out there in a tree hanging out, right? Yeah. Like there's no way you're getting rid of all of it. And that's one of the things that drives down the wall. And people are like, oh, I smoked a cigarette the other day, like blah blah blah. Like,
and we all know guys who smoke like chain smokers and kill deer all the time. There's a lot to be said about thermals, and how you're using the wind. In the morning you can get away with so much in the morning.
Yep.
In the evening, you've really got to be much more careful, because that scent cone is the cooler air is just going to make that thing melt right out around the tree all around you. And we always have deer 10 yards, 5 yards from the tree. Half of our shots this year are straight down.
Well, even the night Yumi and Tyler went into that one spot, we had a bad wind for it, and I was like, I know the deer are going to come out up the mountain from us, but as soon as that sun starts setting, the thermals are just going to pull down, and we're going to get away with it. Like, I know we're going to get away with it, and that was one of the nights I killed a deer that night.
And
we should have killed 2 deer that night.
Just coming well,
but that's a whole nother thing, right?
Yep.
So let's keep moving here. Moon phases, and this one really cracks me up.
I don't even know what to say about moon phases.
Yeah, we had a waning gibbous or something today.
Waning gibbous.
I can't even.
You don't even want to get into that.
If you're still out there playing the moon phases, I can't help you. Penn State, and we're going to reference them a lot because they have done some terrific work as far as monitoring
extensive research. Yep, just extensive.
It's been proven false, not just by Penn State, but by multiple people. It's been proven false.
We're talking deer biologists, but let's throw some factors in there that might sway someone's opinion. Like, if we only hunted the perfect moon phases, because we're waiting for good weather, because there's only so many stands that we have on our 5,000 acre plot of ground out in Iowa, and that's when we're going to hunt. And the perfect moon phase is on the 3rd of November. So, you know, we go out and we hunt the 3rd of November and we see a lot of big buck movement. Well, hello, it's the 3rd of November. You should see a lot of big buck movement.
Yeah.
And then if the weather patterns are great, there are other reasons, I think, why those deer are moving. But if you're only hunting the moon phase, it might skew your opinion one way or the other. But for me, we hunt 70 or 80 days. I mean, we started on the 9th of September this year.
It was 9. It was, yeah.
Or
it was
the 8th.
No, it was
and
the
you
9th.
hunted, you know, we hunted on the 9th of September in Maryland. We've hunted all the way through, and we're not worried about weather dependent. We're worried about when I have time to get in the woods, when I'm not working or when he's not working.
Yep.
And this year I was fortunate because I didn't have a job until the 3rd of December. So, you know, I hunted relentlessly, mornings, evenings, all day long. And I can tell you that I don't notice anything with the moon. If anything, I think a full moon probably has deer move quite a bit more at night than you know, normally, because they can see a little bit better. But usually when you have a full moon and there's a lot of light, you know, it's clear. And if it's clear, usually the temperatures drop. See, these things, all these other weather patterns that come into it, if it's clear, bright light at night, it's usually because there's no cover from clouds, which means that, you know, the temperature drops a lot more efficiently in the evening, and it gets darker or it gets cooler faster as the night goes on. And I think that gets deer up on their feet to move quite a bit during a full moon. And then maybe because it's colder, they're out a little bit more in the morning before they go back and hit the beds. But let's face facts. I mean, if you're close to a deer that's bedded, they're going to be back up on their feet at 10, 10:30, 11 o'clock in the afternoon anyway to feed. So I would say if you're going to think about moon phases, you know, try to take a look at all of the other factors that are involved in the moon phases. And again, the moon phases coincide with, you know, that timing of the rut when the temperatures start to drop, the testosterone starts to boost, and these bucks really want to get on their feet and move. Well, at the end of Halloween, it's a full moon out there. Yeah, of course, there's deer moving everywhere.
Yeah, that's got to be my biggest pet peeve. My great grandpappy killed his biggest buck, and it was a full moon. That one gets me going. Either way, we'll keep going. This is probably my second favorite pet peeve here. Nocturnal deer. This one's a little rough for me. I can't. Well, go ahead, start us off with this one. This one gets me all riled up.
Again, for a bunch of years as a less informed hunter, I would think that, yeah, a lot of deer are just nocturnal. They don't move. I spent a lot of time listening to other hunters. And as with everything I do now, if somebody's telling me to do something a certain way, my general inclination is to do it different. Because if everybody's doing it that way, and they're not having success, why would I want to do it that way? So with the nocturnal deer, again, a lot of deer, they want to stay bedded, the vast majority of the day. They're going to get up and feed, and I think the challenge is getting close enough to see that without spooking. And if you can do that, high wind scenarios, after a heavy rain where everything's nice and wet and you can sneak in across those crunchy leaves because they're not making any noise, and then if you've got high wind in your favor, you can get in and you can climb a tree within 75 yards of big whitetails, and they never know that you're there. If they were nocturnal, I wouldn't be able to videotape them at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But the vast majority of people, they're not going to be in a tree high enough to see some of those deer because they're laying in those low spots, and when they do stand up, they're in absolute thicket of grass and tangled briars and everything else, and all you can see is their ears or their horns glistening in the sunlight, or maybe you pick up their nose, and then you can zoom the camera in and get a good angle on them. But this year I saw more bucks on their feet during the day than I ever have, and that's because I truly believe that they're not nearly as nocturnal as most people think. Do some of them spend way more time moving around at night? Absolutely. Are they on food plots at night? Are they on your cameras at night? Yeah, that's because they're moving a long way to get there. But they're on their feet definitely before the lights go out.
Oh, early season, the buck I killed this in early season, when we think about that, we're thinking the last 5 to 10 minutes of light is when we're going to see a deer. I mean, the rut's really the only time where you anticipate seeing a deer at 11 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But, I mean, my buck, I walked in and I was up in a bedding area like we talked about, and I mean, it was maybe 5:30. I mean, when we got out, it was dark, but it was probably 2 hours before legal, maybe an hour and a half. But he came in, he was munched on acorns a little bit, he bedded down. That was a cool story.
Well, you're on a steep ridge.
Yeah, oh yeah,
right, super steep.
Yep.
And then you've got a transition where it's real nice open hardwood oaks on that steep ridge, and then you have a transition where kind of like a little bit of a bench, and then you've got a lot of rocks on the opposite side of the bench, and that whole area is just jam packed with real thick, stupid thick bedding area.
Yeah, but I mean, it was a wet day again, right? So I was able to sneak right up in there.
And you caught him on the downwind side of that bedding area.
So the wind changed. I don't remember exactly what happened. The wind changed when I got up in there, and I think that's one of the things that prompted him to move in the first place was that change in the wind. So he went to a spot where he thought was better, and he bedded down 30 yards from me, and I watched him for an hour and 20 minutes. It was the most painful hour and 20 minutes of my life. And I remember I was texting my wife, and I just stopped like mid-text message, and then I just put the phone away. And then she blew up my phone a little bit because she knew that I wasn't texting. Like, she knew I was on deer. And then I was able to look at right back after I finally texted. I was like, dude, I just smacked a giant. And that's how I knew the whole time span there. But
well, he was about this big, huh?
I wish he was that big. He wasn't quite that big, but
close,
for yeah, I mean, it was a good deer, and just the whole experience was really cool. But I think the whole point there is if you're not pushing that bedding, like you're never gonna see it. And those wet and windy days, man, you can get all up in there.
A lot of guys, they don't want to hunt. They don't want to hunt the off weather, right? So it'll be raining all morning long, and then right at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I have a trail cam video. I posted it earlier this year, and what I should do is try to get that, put it on a YouTube channel. But it's just an absolutely massive, beautiful, clean, really symmetric 12 point. And we were actually headed out to go into a spot, and it was raining hard. We had a storm system coming in. We're watching the radar. We're doing a lot of looking and a lot of just really kind of dialing in on where we want to go, what we want to check out in a new area that we hadn't hunted all year. And this deer, where the trail camera was at, was a good 1.5 miles from where we left the truck. So for us to get to it, it was going to be, a long walk. And I didn't get up there till about 3:30 and get set up in a stand. But right before I jumped in the stand, I pulled the card off the camera, and then when I brought it home that night, I had missed that deer. I missed that deer by 2 hours. Probably one of the biggest bucks that I've seen or videotaped in Pennsylvania. It's an absolute giant, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 155, 160. Just a perfect symmetrical 12 point, like 11-inch G2. I was just a gross deer. But anyway, as soon as that rainstorm stopped, he was on his feet moving.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the things that you've got to kind of hunt the weather. You've got to be willing to get out there and get wet on those days so that you're in the stand when the deer want to move. And that's something that I've always tried to do. It just didn't work out that day because we didn't have all day to hunt, and we were teaching another guy how to use a saddle. So we just had a late start to what we wanted to do. And that's a lesson learned for me because I should have been on that deer.
Yep. So, but to cycle that back though, one of the biggest bucks you've seen on a trail camera, I guess, in Pennsylvania, and it was, 1 o'clock in the afternoon that thing was moving?
Well, I think 1:37, I think, was when the video set was actually taken.
So, I mean, it just, you can't convince me that there's nocturnal deer out there. They like the low light scenarios, I get it, but it's not nocturnal. And that
was well before the rut too.
Yeah. That was like what, 1 to 2 weeks before it.
Yeah, at least
really,
a week before the water.
Yeah. So, deer just aren't nocturnal. If you think that and that's what you're seeing, well, you're not close enough to bedding. So change up what you're doing. Maybe change up how you're doing it. Pick some more inclement weather days and get out there and get after it.
Yeah, try to use all those things to your advantage as much as possible.
Yeah. So this kind of ties into the next thing we were going to talk about. Deer don't move on windy days, which is entirely false. I'm going to cite Penn State again because I can't help it. They have deer that are tracked with GPS collars. They have proven this false. It's proven that deer move more on windy days. And from our own experience with that, we can certainly attest to that. And once again, it's a lot easier to sneak into the woods on a windy day. The only thing I'll caution you about is trees do come down on windy days, and that's for me. That's the one thing I'm not.
You're a little scared of that.
I had 2 of them come down within 50 yards of me the past 2 years now, and I just if the wind's over like 10 to 15 mile an hour gusts, I'm not going out. It's just not worth it to me. But that's when the deer start moving more.
I killed that one right there. The wind was probably blowing all of 20 to 25 miles an hour all day long. Mm-hmm. We left the truck at 3:15 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning. 19 degrees out. We're basically stripped down to t-shirts and shorts.
Walking in with a snow squall that wasn't
right.
planned, just smacked us in the face. That was cool.
Completely soaked by the time we get to the tree. But we leave at like 3:30. We find it's over 3 miles, and it's some of the absolute toughest terrain I'm going to find in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. The last 900 to 1,000 yards is straight up. You go from like 800 feet in elevation to 1,400 feet in elevation over that last 900 yards. It's brutal. And then when I got up there, we stripped down, took all of our wet clothes off, try to dry off as much as possible, and then get in the good cold weather gear. But then we sat in a tree. You froze out around 11:30 or so.
It was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, I don't believe that. He froze out, headed off the mountain, and I stuck it out up there in a blizzard and crazy 25 mile an hour wind, swaying in the tree all over the place all day. And then I got down at like 1:30. I put a stalk on a really nice 8-point, and it just didn't work out. And I'm glad it didn't, because I got over to a spot where there was a lot more thermal cover, a lot more wind cover for these deer. There's a bunch of mountain laurel, some really thick areas with hemlock trees, and I figured that's where they'd be better than this guy. As soon as the wind died down at like 4:30 in the afternoon, it's like the woods came alive. As soon as the change happened, and again, that's where I focus on changes. I focus on changes in weather. I focus on changes in topography, changes in edges from like hardwoods to softwoods, or hardwoods to a field, or CRP and stuff, like anything like that. I'm focused, like that just draws, because that's where the deer are all focused at. And that deer come out, and I think it was 5 minutes after, or 7 minutes after 5, when I finally shot that deer.
I remember it was 2 minutes before legal. You sent that text message with your arrow lit up, and I was like, oh man. And
at that point, I've already been on the mountain for
over 12 hours.
A long time. Mm-hmm. And then I didn't get that deer out till about 1:30 in the morning the next day. So again, weather patterns, are deer nocturnal? He wasn't necessarily nocturnal. He was just hanging out trying to stay warm in that heavy cover, because it offered some sort of thermal advantage on a cold day. And that was what day was that? The 17th of November?
I remember it was second to the last
day of the season last year. So whatever day that was.
Yeah.
I think it was Thursday the 17th. I have to look at a calendar, but again, nocturnal, yeah.
Not quite, but if you're not hunting the last 5 to 10 minutes before dark, man, you might not see it.
And this is one of those areas that's not really highly pressured either, because nobody can get to it. It's
like you said, you're talking a 14-hour day, and that's what's shorter days. I can't even imagine doing an early season. We haven't really done that. I don't know if there's really a point.
70 degrees.
Yeah, you can't. But yeah, I mean, if you're willing to put the miles on, you can really get into some excellent deer hunting, some excellent unpressured deer hunting.
You can have a lot of excellent hunting without putting any miles on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had a 50-yard drag to the truck tonight.
I mean,
and you probably saw
nice.
30 deer in there.
To be fair, my buck this year was only about 100-yard drag to the truck. So, yeah, I'm not saying you have to go far, but we also know that there's some bigger deer up there than him, and there's a lot of big bucks up there. I think is kind of the difference.
A buddy of ours shot a really nice 10-point in there, really nice symmetrical, probably 130-inch 10-point in there this year.
Yep.
Probably only 20 yards from the tree I was sitting in when I killed that one last year.
Yep.
But he shot that in rifle season, so a little bit different scenario there. There's a lot you can get away with up there in rifle season that you can't get away with in bow season. And again, there's a really unique dynamic. There's sort of a rock ledge on the back side of a bluff. It's probably a 70-foot hill, and the wind comes over the top. It just funnels down in there, blows all that area out. And a lot of the early times that we're up there, you know, myself, not so inclined to hunt there because I knew the disadvantages of the wind, but the other two guys involved that were hunting it heavy, they really wanted to be in that little spot because that's where the trail camera pictures were. But sure enough, you'd have camera pictures, and then you'd head up there, and then you wouldn't get anything all day, but an hour after you left, you'd have trail camera pictures everywhere. So it was really unique, and I just happened to find that one tiny little spot where I could set up, and because of the way that rock ledge was, they just all kind of funneled through, and I could be downwind of them. And I sat in that funnel, and I watched a big 11-point. I watched this guy come out. I had that big 6-point that you had trouble with last year and wanted to kill.
Speaking of sitting in the bowl with where you can't beat them on the wind,
and then having 9 or 10 does come down through, and then whacking one of those, and then going up 2 days later and shooting him. But yeah, what's it like down there? I mean, this guy come into what, 25 yards or something like that?
I needed one more step out from behind the tree, and he busted me. But that's the thing, and the deer know it. I mean, sitting in that bowl, you got just a swirling wind the whole time you're in there. And I mean, I heard him about 100, 125, maybe even 150. It's kind of hard to tell. It was relatively quiet. You get some gusts of winds here and there. I grunted. He comes sprinting up to about 45 yards, and then he starts working a scrape. He doesn't see another buck, and then he just starts taking his time because he knows. And I mean, we could probably even put that video in here for a little bit. You could even see it, but I mean, I don't know if he saw. It doesn't look like he saw me. His head was down, like he's not even literally looking at me.
You were at full draw, and he's coming, and he gets right to the edge of that wind cone, and it was like he was struck by lightning.
Yep.
It's like he was shot out of a cannon to get away from there.
Yeah. I mean, it was that was a heartbreaking moment.
And again, that's the difference between hunting non-pressured big mountain deer versus hunting pressured deer that are involved with human interaction every day. This deer probably has never seen human interaction in his life, at least during the day, and he put up with absolutely zero tolerance for any sin.
Well, so I'm glad you bring that up, though, right? Because I'll tell people, like, some of these big bucks, man, like, you're better off not sticking a trail camera out there if you think there's a big buck rolling through, because they'll just disappear on you. And
it's happened to me a lot.
Man, like, up in populated areas where these deer are used to, and deer see IR, right? So when your cameras are taking photos at night, they see that flash of light. Let's make that very clear right now. They see that 100%. So
I started hanging 14 feet in the air. You know what most of my pictures look like?
Yeah.
Well, just looking at the camera.
So I think there's certain scenarios, like highly pressured areas, like they're used to it. But when you're talking 3 miles deep into some Pennsylvania mountain bucks, you're not getting away with it.
No.
And I mean, I have an absolute giant that I got on camera a couple times this year, but after I do, he like disappears for a couple weeks. You never showed me that
picture.
Well, you know, sometimes I need first crack at them.
I see how it is.
If you know where they're at, then you'll go and kill them on me. That's the problem. We hunt a lot of the same areas, so
we're kind of highly competitive with it.
We're a little competitive with it. We'll get away from that. We'll get away from that maybe a little. Maybe
Yeah,
not.
I think
It drives us though. Like, man, I just, score 7-4 right now. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You love to cut it back, don't you? 7-5, maybe.
7-5.
Oh, and who shot $2? Oh,
do you want to talk about that $1?
We can talk about it if you want. I don't care.
I don't want to, and that's just.
I shot it because it stood there looking at me for 27 minutes, and I wanted to get out of the tree.
Even an immature buck picked off your wind, right? Because he was downwind to you. That was the whole scenario, wasn't it?
Yeah, because I was set up on a spot where, and again, I went in to retrieve a camera that's been hanging in a spot down in Maryland for like 2 years, and it just suddenly, in a windstorm, went dark. So I was able to get in there. It was probably still a month and a half later, but a tree had come down and knocked this thing out of the sky, broke the mount, knocked the antenna off of it. So it had taken like 4 million pictures in 5 hours. So I knew something was up. But anyway, I go in there to get that camera, so I've got to walk down the hill, and then I come back up. But there was 2 scrapes up at the top of the hill, and I thought, you know what, I could probably set up on it. And I'm picturing deer coming with the way the wind was blowing from left to right, or from right to left, left to right up over there. More often than not, coming from the right to my left. So if I had come around the back side of those scrapes, I'd probably be okay. But sure enough, that deer does exactly what deer do, not anything like what I'd think they do. Bedding's down here, and you would think they'd be checking that bedding left to right, and I'd have sort of an off wind there because the wind's kind of coming. Oh, I don't know. It's kind of coming down off the mountain as it's getting cooler there. So I figure out thermal's at my advantage, and for whatever reason, he just came straight down, sort of the same way I came in, but probably 20 yards off the trail that I come in. And as soon as he worked the scrape, he come down over the hill. Then he bounced right into where I'd walked, and they just stood there. And it was all of 27 minutes. And I'm texting Alfred, sending pictures. I'm like, yo, should I? And he's like, send it. So I did.
Yeah. I'm done passing on deer. Like, it is what it is. Like, yeah. And especially, we're on $3 in Maryland. Like, you can't.
My Pennsylvania tag is sacred, right? Like, I want to try to do the best I can to shoot at least 120-inch mature deer.
Mm-hmm.
We go back to the Penn State study, right? They had Average Joe was the name of the buck. They had data on that deer for who knows how many years, 6.5 years old, I think, before he finally died or something happened to him. But Average Joe was, less than a 100-inch 8-point. And we're talking a 5 or 6-year-old buck in Pennsylvania that's got an antler like that. And he was collared, so they know it's him.
Yep.
But he had absolutely no mass, right? And you can see the difference. I mean, you're talking, the difference in mass is just ridiculous. I think that antler, the way it is, scores 62 inches. It's one of the biggest ones I've found. So when you're talking about a deer that's 6 years old, you'd think, oh, they've got to put on some mass, they got to grow. But deer in Pennsylvania are a lot different. They're just built different. And it's really like, there's as vast of a difference between antler growth in some of these deer as there are as, like, if you go to Texas, and a Texas deer doesn't develop any of the heavy fat that a deer in Pennsylvania will, because they don't have to struggle through that brutal bitter winter and have that fat store. They're going to have food readily available for them pretty much year round. Not so much in the fall and winter, but pretty much year round down there. And then things start to green up real early in the spring, so they have food. They don't have to store the fat. These deer up here, they've got to store fat. So anytime that you take energy away from antler growth or structural body growth like bones and stuff, the antler growth just isn't there. And it's hard to swallow that. Like sometimes because we want to hunt big bucks. And there are some really big bucks in Pennsylvania, and it's getting better with the antler restrictions, but that's been a long time coming. I think that was 2002, 2003 when they started that. And it's getting better, but
even still, you're just talking genetic differences, and like you said, the difference in. Well, I mean, the food difference too. Like these deer up here, like they hit acorns so hard because
that's all there is.
That's all there is, right? Like,
you know, out in the Midwest, they've got, you know, every grain, everything that's grown on a farm.
Yep.
All the ag fields.
Yep.
You know.
But so I think that pretty much wraps up all the misconceptions we wanted to talk about. But we should circle back to last podcast, right? So we ended on kind of like a cliffhanger, right?
Yeah.
So we were talking about broadheads specifically. And I think you and I think this is safe to say, you and I both believe that your broadhead choice is largely irrelevant as long as you're running a heavy arrow, you will punch through bone, right? And you and I are on the same page with broadheads right now.
I have to sit back and relax for this one.
But the heavy arrow, man, like you don't need to run fixed blades, and I'm totally against them, honestly, because I just think they're so unnecessary unless you're using a recurve or a trad bow, right? Like there's a time and place, but if you're running a modern compound and you're shooting 300 feet per second, like
there's a guy that's recently, like, I've seen some TikTok videos. I think there's a YouTube video out there. I won't mention his name, but he's telling everybody that's listening to his stuff that if you have, I don't know, a certain amount of foot-pounds worth of energy at the end of your arrow when it impacts an animal, you might as well leave, like say you have 80 foot-pounds of energy, you might as well leave 50 foot-pounds of energy in the truck and only go hunting with 30 because it takes 50 foot-pounds of energy for that broadhead to open. Come on. Again, there's a lot of stuff out there that, you know, people say this is what's actually happening, but it's probably very far from the truth. Prime example, this deer, live weight, over 200 pounds. It's just an absolute monster. It's one of the biggest dead deer I've seen. There's probably 2 or 3 other deer that I've seen that are bigger than that, and I know one of those was probably a 6.5-year-old deer. I mean, just an absolute muscled beast of a deer. And a 200-pound deer in Pennsylvania, they're very few between. I shot him directly through the shoulder, not just through, you know, the thin part of the scapula. I'm talking right through the T, right through the intersection. I put that broadhead right through there. I shot him with a Mega Meat, 100 grain Mega Meat out of a 58-pound compound bow. I'm shooting a Matthews. 571 total grains for the arrow, and I only have, what am I shooting, about a 28.5-inch arrow, 29-inch arrow, because I've got a 26.5-inch draw because I'm using a thumb button. So I have everything going against me as far as maximum speed out of the bow. I would venture to guess that thing's probably only shooting 268 feet per second. But again, 26 yards, 35 feet in a tree, straight into that shoulder. I have the arrow downstairs where there's probably 8.5 or 9 inches worth of broken arrow. I went straight through the shoulder, put that arrow inside both of the lungs, and then he snapped it off when he ran, and that deer went maybe 55 yards. These guys that say you can't blow through a shoulder with an expandable, again, there's a lot of stuff that happens, and we learn this every day when we watch the videos. The best part about filming the hunts, is we get to see exactly what happens. I mean, I had a bad shot on a doe. Being able to film it and watch where the impact is, to see how the deer reacts when the arrow hits it, that stuff it's monumental in trying to explain. And then we butcher our own deer too.
Yeah.
So we get to do the autopsy. We get to see exactly what happened. Again, the one tonight, not a great shot. She was kind of folded. Was she scratching or biting?
She was coming in, and it's January 5th, and she was still coming in to work a scrape, right? So like, that's crazy to me. But either way, yeah, she was completely twisted around, and I aimed a little I didn't aim. I shot a little further back than what I meant to, but this is why I love the expandables. And I've had a lot of shots that are slightly further back, but you hit that diaphragm a little bit, you get some liver, some lung. With a 2-inch cutting diameter, you can hit a lot on a deer. And
I think you're better off being further back. I mean, a gut shot deer is a dead deer. The thing is that you have to have the patience to understand.
It's how you play it.
I mean, I've shot behind, I've shot too far forward, I've shot too high, I've shot too low. I mean, we're talking 50 deer with the bow in the last 11, 12 years.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe more than that. And you've got 10 with them in the last 2 years, so things are going to happen. The deer moves way more often than what we think, and we see that when we start to slow that stuff down on camera. But when you have that 2-inch cutting diameter with a 3-blade broadhead, it does some massive damage to it. Now, can you use that broadhead again? Maybe.
Let's talk about it. Let's get right into it. NAP Spitfires, right?
All right.
That's what it was. An NAP Spitfire, right?
Sure was.
And how many deer did you put that through?
I put it through 4 deer.
You put it through 4 deer.
4 deer, same arrow.
Same blades.
I did break a knock, right? I broke one of my nocturnal knocks, so I had to put a new knock in it. Same arrow, 4 deer, same season. And he approaches me about, well, I want to shoot some broadheads because, blah, I can't, he wasn't real happy with what was going on. And he's,
Well, I bought into the misconception, right? I bought into it. I was like, I got fixed blades, like they're not shooting the way I want them to, which, I mean, we learned after the fact it's an improperly tuned bow. Like, we get that now, right? And you understood that. I didn't. It was my first year archery.
And we got it tuned up and it shot really good after that.
Even with a bow that was out of tune and my arrows fishtailing, making 2 or 3 inch tears in paper, I shot a doe and completely obliterated her shoulder. Heavy arrows, but we'll circle back, right?
But yeah, I used this thing for 4 different deer. One of them was a smaller deer, and I made great shots on them. I didn't hit any solid bone other than a rib. And you can think whatever you want, whatever. But I just picked that thing up, washed it off, put it back in the quiver, and then he's like, "Yeah, I was like, here, try this one. Let me know what you think." And again, it's in great operational condition. None of the blades were bent. Blades were still fairly sharp. And they have those little springs on the inside to hold the blades in the Spitfires, which I think is really unique. They do wear out after a while if you shoot a couple deer with them. But I give him this thing, and you practice with it.
I think I shot it once or twice.
Yeah, you shot it like once, twice, 2, 3 times into a target, and then what do? You put it back on the quiver, and then you're out one night, and you're like, "Ah, man, whatever." You put that on there, and the 5th deer that you ever shot.
Well, it was Maryland. I shot the 4th with an Amazon fixed blade, like a $1 broadhead. She went down in 50 yards, and then the second one is the one I've really made that marginal shot on. I ended up being a little further back once again, man. Like I don't know what it is. I tend to pull like towards more towards the middle of the deer, but expandables just do the job, and all of them dead within 50 yards. Like it's.
Then you come back to Pennsylvania, short on broadheads. We hunt a couple days later with Tyler, and you smoke one down out of the tree at probably, 10 yards from 35, 40 feet. Well, you were,
dude, straight down.
You were way up in that tree. I looked at that video today, and you were probably 45 feet in that tree.
I was all the way up in there.
And again, complete pass-through on another big doe, no problem.
Yep.
So, can you use them again? Sure, if they're not buggered up.
Yeah.
I'm going to imagine that a lot of these fixed blades that go through a deer, when they come out, they've got to be resharpened. They've got to be, and again, you start to resharpen them, and if you sharpen too much off of one side and not enough off the other, well, then you're going to start and mess with, you're going to mess with the way that arrow flies. How much? Probably negligible, but I'm not in the business of sitting here sharpening broadheads. I'll pull the blades off my mega meats and for $19 have 4 new ones.
Yeah, just replace them. It's not worth the time. I mean, I think about everything in time. You're going to spend 2 hours sharpening broadheads. I'd rather be out in the woods. My perspective, not everybody's, but I think we even looked at some studies here, right? As fixed blades, recovery of deer with fixed blades versus recovery of deers, and there's a lot of variables in there, right?
Another military installation where the data is collected by these guys who manage the area. I don't remember what the study said exactly. This is last year when I read this, but somewhere in the neighborhood of like 83% of deer over 30 some years were recovered with fixed blades versus 92% of deer that were recovered with expandables.
Yeah.
Now, the time that the expandables were being used, there's some other factors that come into play here. You know, when they first started doing this study, the military installation only let them use fixed blades. And that was when the technology of the modern bow wasn't as great as what it is today. Because let's face facts, a bow from 25 or 30 years ago does not even remotely compare
Bows from 15 years ago
to a bow today. Well, sure.
Yeah.
But as the technology evolved, guys started to use, more of the expandable broadheads. And when expandable broadheads came out, they weren't perfect when they first came out. So even with all that said, the data says for all of the deer harvested, because they're still harvesting deer with fixed blade, out of all of the deer harvested or shot at with fixed blades, they're at an 83% recovery rate versus 92 with expandables. That's hard facts. That's thousands of deer harvested over 30 some years worth of study.
So I will say,
I can't disagree with that.
If you're going to run a light arrow, and I don't know why, like all the manufacturers love to push this speed thing, right? I don't care about speed at all. Like, I just don't.
I got something for that too, so go ahead.
I mean, when you're talking 20 to 30 yards, I can't even see it making, like, I don't take 40-yard, 50-yard shots. I know you do, and you're very successful. A lot of it comes down to how well you can read a deer. I'm not that confident in my abilities. I'd rather wait, and a lot of times if you just wait, you end up getting a shot. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but I'll never regret that shot I don't take. Nevertheless, though, like if you're running a light arrow, expandables may not be the way to go, but I would just say run a heavier arrow. I think either way, you just can't go wrong running a heavier arrow. And I think I'm pushing 600 grains with my arrow out of a 70 pound compound bow.
We live in the world of social media. We live in the world where everybody wants to post stuff. They want to do the things that we're doing. They want to show everybody how successful they are. It may be on film, but people won't show the stuff that happens that's bad. One, it's a pride thing, right? There's so much competition in hunting. Everybody wants to do better than their next friend. I know people that I hunt with that will miss a deer and won't say anything to me, or they'll make a bad shot on a deer and not find it, and they won't say anything to me, and then I'll hear about it somewhere 3 months later. And I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't know that happened. Because they don't want to deal with, hey, look, I made a bad shot, can't find it, you want to come help me. They just rather go do it themselves. If they find the deer, great. If they don't, hey, look, just chalk it up. I tried my best. And they do. I mean, they spend a lot of time looking. But it comes down to that pride thing. And one of the interesting facts about the lighter speed bows, because I told you I have something, is that they're usually geared towards target archers.
Yep.
And throughout bow hunting, target archers they've outperformed everybody else because they get it done. And they usually do it with a lighter setup, but because they have that background of a target archer, they put the arrow where it needs to go. And when they understand the dynamics of how that deer moves, and the anatomy of that deer, and they know where to hit it, they will put that arrow there every time. We're talking about, standard deviation the size of a $50 or a 50-cent piece, because they're just going to put that arrow there every time. So if they always put it right in the lungs and never hit anything but a rib, a 430 grain arrow is going to do you just fine. But it's that time when the big buck ducks. Or ducks and spins at the same time when you're trying to take a 30-yard shot on a deer that came in chasing a doe.
Yep.
Those are the uncontrollables, and that's why I enjoy shooting, 571 grain with an expandable broadhead.
Yep. You don't always plan for the best case scenario. You plan for the worst, right? Like that's the way it works. And just time and time again, we have tested these heavy arrows just blow through shoulders. I mean, and like you said, we're not purposely aiming for deer shoulders. Even I hit it on the exit, you still blow through them. Like quartering away, you hit that opposite shoulder.
Quartering away, and you're not quite as high in a tree, and you have the ability to just jam it right through that opposite shoulder.
Yep, we've done that a number of times now. I mean, that happens more often than us actually just hitting the shoulder on entrance. Just so we put that out there, but
straight through front legs and lodged in the shoulder or the opposite leg.
Yeah,
you know, like all I have to do is go into the lungs. And again, you know, there are downsides of not getting a full pass through. You know, your blood trail's not going to be that great, but if you stuff it right through the leg and into the heart, well, then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that's probably everything we want to talk about.
So we don't believe the hype?
No, I mean, I'd say get out there and test what works. If it works for you, do whatever you want. I'm not telling you how to live your life. We're just stating what we have seen and what you've tested over 30 years, what I have found over the past couple of years in killing a lot of deer. And we're just putting out what works for us. So, do you want to end on a question again? I don't really have a question picked out.
You don't have one?
No, I don't have one.
Well, think of one real quick.
I picked out the whole topic for what we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah. I don't know if I have one.
We don't have to end on a question.
I think we should, though. All right. Let's look.
Let's make it an easy one.
Yeah, I want to know what everybody's favorite brand of camo is and why.
Oh, that's a good one.
You
Yeah.
know? Like why? I mean, you see what you're wearing, but this is all we wear. We love the Real Tree Edge.
I just like the way it looks.
I like the Real Tree Edge. We got Real Tree Edge Crocs and stuff.
Everything.
And, you know.
Yeah.
And again, I've got a couple different ones. You know, it's either the Scent Lock or the Real Tree Edge. I think there's a huge advantage to having, you know, an early setup that looks like this, or you know, a slightly grayer and white kind of background. Like some of the Sitka stuff this time of year looks really good in a tree because you have all that white that's mixed in with the camo. It kind of breaks you up against the outline of the sky and stuff, especially on an overcast day. So there's, yeah, but you know, tell us what you think. I want to see it in the comments.
Cool.
All right, dude.
That's it.
We'll close it up. Good luck to everybody out there still trying to kill a late season deer.
Yeah.
If we get out, I might go out tomorrow.
I'm waiting until, well, I mean, I'm playing Soldier this weekend. So I have one more tag to Pennsylvania. I am saving it.
We have an impending snowstorm.
We do, and I'm
and I want to hunt tomorrow, but the snow's not going to be on the ground until probably late tomorrow into Sunday.
Yep.
And then I have off work Monday, so I'm thinking I want to shoot a deer when there's 8 inches of fresh falling snow out there, and I'm thinking even if I go hunting tomorrow, I'm not pulling the trigger on one. Unless it's damn near perfect, because I want to do it on Monday with some snow. So
with the smoke pole, baby.
Oh,
Get him with the flintlock.
I could get out there after it. All right.
Yeah, let's do it.